Leviticus 16 to 18 today, and I get the impression that this first bit is linked with where the part where God sets fire to Aaron's two sons, or two of Aaron's sons, and he seems almost like he's miffed Aaron. I think I've missed something in there, but either way, it seems to open with God talking to Moses, saying, "Tell Aaron he can't come into the tabernacle and go into the super holy room at the back where the Ark of the Covenant is whenever he feels like it. He's got to do all this super big ritual." And this then seems to feed into a once a year ritual, really massive one, where lots of animals are getting killed and blood's everywhere. And it becomes this thing called the Day of Atonement. The idea is that this is going to be like a super Sabbath sort of thing. So no work apart from all this sacrificing, which seems like a lot of work to me, but there we go. It says it's on the 10th day of the 7th month. But given that the Julian calendar didn't exist at this point, sadly that's not going to be the 10th of July, so we don't all go back to work and have a day off because God said so. But clearly at this point in biblical things, this is quite a big deal. We basically have this big long ritual where a lot of extra faff and ceremony and pomp and stuff all has to happen. But there's the introduction of the concept of scapegoats, which I haven't actually told was from the Bible at all, but here it is, along comes this scapegoat. The idea is you bring two goats along, you cast lots over these two goats, and the goat that loses, I think they kind of both lose, but perhaps the first goat loses the most. That one's chopped up, blood splattered everywhere, fairly standard sacrifice. The second one, though, has the priest lay hands on the goat and then confess all of the sins of all of the Israelites, which it seems are sort of magically transferred to the goat. And then the goat is then sent off in the wilderness and takes the sins off with it. Which is a very interesting idea, I thought. But it's clearly metaphorical, isn't it? There's no actual download of what you did into a goat that then goes off. But interesting that God is making that provision on the assumption that a lot of sinning is going to keep going on for annually getting rid of it, which suggests that all the interim sacrifice and all the rest of it's perhaps not quite enough to completely clear it, so you get some sort of cumulative effect, build-up of sin that gets dumped on this goat, and then off it goes. There's a lot of animals involved. I don't remember which animal's which. There's also an interesting part, a bit of insight into sacrifice, and that God says the life of an animal is in its blood. And so it seems that all this sacrifice where you're chopping up animals and spraying blood on your earlobes and your foot and all over the thing 7 times, something in that blood is the key. It's not the actual chopping of the animal or the rest of it, seems, but something in that blood is supposed to be magical or something, even though it's already said that the smell of barbecue is pleasing to God. So it seems there's an element of sacrifice in terms of giving up something good of yours to show devotion, but also something actually in the blood. God then goes on to a big list of rules about who you can't go to bed with. And his start point for this is that everybody in Egypt was doing this. Everyone in Canaan, where the Israelites are going, is doing this, and saying the land is going to vomit them out. That's a funny choice of word, but translation, I suppose. But clearly, all of this stuff that God is having to specify, you must not do this, which, bear with me, it's going to seem fairly obvious. Lots of people are apparently doing this, so I guess that's perhaps a sign of the times that all kinds of weird things. Interestingly, all of these explicit people that you cannot go to bed with are all directed to men, except for one, which is a woman saying that she cannot present herself to an animal because this is a perversion. Right, okay, yeah, probably fair enough. Bit odd it has to be stated, but it's interesting that it is all just all geared towards men. And I'm not sure if that's just an indication that women are less depraved than men, or just this odd bias in everything that almost seems to ignore women entirely. I'm going to read the list because, again, high tech and all the rest of it. But this is who God says that men cannot go to bed with. Close relatives. Fair. Your mother. Not your mother. Your own mother. It has to be stated that you can't go to bed with your own mother. Any of your father's wives. I guess that's technically not your mother. That's... well, I guess that's perhaps the least weird so far. your sister, your granddaughter, your aunt, your sister-in-law, your daughter-in-law, a woman and her daughter at the same time. It seems you can potentially go to bed with your wife's sister, but you can't marry her unless your wife is dead. Sort of reasonable that you can't marry your wife's sister. You can't go to bed with anyone else's wife. You can't go to bed or barn or wherever you are. You can't go to get all Sodom and Gomorrah with your donkey or any other animals at all. And somewhat controversially, it also says that a man cannot go to bed with another man in the same way as he does with a woman. I'm not sure if that distinction of in the same way as a woman makes for anything, but it does seem to be pretty clear that that's not okay, and obviously that's not something that's aged very well at all. In the middle of all this, it also mentions that you shouldn't give your son to Molech. Don't know. It doesn't actually say in the book who Molech is, so I googled that, little cheat, and that sounds like just some sort of pagan god, but it's just random, this big little list of people you can't go to bed with, and then, oh, by the way, you can't give your son to this fake god, even though that's quite clearly one of the Ten Commandments. It's just very, very odd. And most of those rules, fine, kind of okay. Clearly of their time. And of course the big one at the end there, which is presumably the root cause of some of the frictions between religious organisations and modern life. But yeah, so again, some more very strange rules and some very strange people doing some very strange things. Next up, we've got some more rules. We are definitely getting there through Leviticus now, I promise. It's difficult to know how to do this stuff justice and pull out interesting points without getting bogged down into really boring stuff. But we are nearly there. We're going to hang in there, and soon it will all be over and we'll find another book and hope that's less weird.